a large portion of the success of those parts of the film all boil down to Rachel's makeup, which was just amazing. She's in the other room. I'm sure she's listening and her ears are burning.
Hi, this is the Awardist. I'm Clarissa Cruz, executive editor of Entertainment Weekly, and I'm here with Tom Holland, star of Cherry. Hi, Tom.
How you
Welcome.
doing? Thank you for
Thanks for.
having me. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. So I saw Cherry and I was just blown away. Amazing, amazing job. Can you tell people who have not seen the film what it's about?
Cherry is the story of a young boy who falls in love and gets tangled up in making the wrong decisions. He joins the military. He serves a tour in Iraq, and on his return, it's about this young man suffering from PTSD and falling into substance abuse. And the film is about how he's constantly chasing the love of his life while also trying to balance this life of dealing with a drug addiction. And he ends up having to rob banks, not only to fuel his drug addiction, but to fuel the adrenaline rush that he became so accustomed to while serving in Iraq. And he eventually is sort of arrested, and it's about his life and his recovery.
I joined the army.
Why would you do that?
Sometimes I feel like I've already seen everything that's gonna happen.
Needless to say, this is very different from some of your previous roles. Can you tell me what drew you to this?
For me as a young actor, I love being challenged. I love kind of putting myself in an uncomfortable situation and trying to figure out a way to get out of it. The Russo brothers are two directors that I really look up to and admire. Two people that I'm very grateful for. They've changed my life in ways that I can't possibly explain. So when they came to me with this material, it's really been like the job that keeps on giving, because I got the chance to work with them again. I got the chance to really stretch myself as an actor, and also got the chance to, make friends for life and have an experience like no other, and kind of grow as a person, as well as an actor.
Was this experience working on Cherry different from working on them on the Avengers films?
Not really, no. I mean, I think that's what is so amazing about the Russos and why I hold them in such a positive light, is that the difference between making a $500 million box office movie and making a really small independent movie about PTSD and substance abuse is so different. But the way that they approached making them is exactly the same. And the way they treated the crew, the respect they had, the way they were able to galvanize everyone and have a really positive and fun experience while the subject matter was so dark and difficult to swallow, was amazing. So for me, there was no real difference in the process, just difference in the subject matter, which made for an amazing experience for me, because it was just such a challenge.
Right. I mean, I can imagine directing the character that you're playing must be different from directing Peter Parker. I mean, can you talk about some of, I guess, sort of like the granular bits as far as differences between that?
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I've obviously never worked with two directors before, and sometimes Joe would come in and give you a note, and then Anthony would come in afterwards and give you a contradicting note. And you sort of be like, I don't know which one I'm supposed to do, because both of them are asking me to do different things. So you'd obviously have to just take it in turns and be like, I'm going to do Anthony's one first, and then I'm going to do Joe's one, and then they can figure out which one they prefer. They just were really willing for me to just push myself as far as I could go when it came to the physicality of the character, which, was losing weight and changing my physical appearance as much as possible, to pushing myself mentally and finding places and emotions in me that I didn't really know that I had, and ones that, quite frankly, I would never like to see ever again. But yeah, I just was really lucky that they were kind of open for me to just do everything I could possibly do to bring this character to life. There was no going too far with playing Cherry, which was a real pleasure.
Was that also in a way scary?
Yeah, it was definitely scary. I mean, you read the script and you read Nico's book, and, I'm a really lucky, privileged kid from Southwest London. I have no concept of hardship of that degree, and I was really worried that I wasn't the right person for the job because I hadn't been through anything like that before. But it just meant that I had to put the time in and do a lot of research and speak to people. And I went to the VA and I interviewed lots of veterans who were suffering from PTSD and substance abuse, and just made sure I did the work, because I think when you're portraying a real person, or you're portraying someone going through something that's happening to people every day, like being a drug addict or suffering from PTSD, you have a duty to do justice to them. So for me, I just wanted to work as hard as possible. And that's kind of what distracted me from the fear of getting it right.
You mentioned Nico Walker, who is the author of the book that this story is based on. Did you meet him? Did you talk to him about it at all when you were doing research for this film?
Unfortunately, no. At one point, there was a phone call scheduled between the two of us to sort of sit down and chat. For various reasons, that didn't happen. I don't really know why. I was never really told why. But the longer and longer you do this and the more and more films you make, you become more and more comfortable with films coming out. You know, like you learn to accept that you're not going to please everyone. Some people will love it. Some people will like it. Some people will hate it. And that's just the way of life. And you just have to deal with that. And I've kind of got to the point where you're not nervous anymore when films are coming out. But I am so nervous for Nico Walker to see this film, because the book, when you read it, he obviously poured so much of his life and heart and soul into it that I really want him to feel like we did justice to his story and to the book that he wrote. So I'm really nervous for him to see it. And I hope when he sees it, we can meet and talk talk about his experiences and all that sort of stuff. But as of yet, we haven't been able to be in touch.
But are there any parallels between this character and you?
I mean, that's where I always start. When I'm trying to build a new character, I always kind of look for the similarities between me and the character. And then that's what I build on first to kind of build this full body picture of who this person is. I guess one of the similarities between him and I is he isn't a quitter. One thing that you'll see, especially when you see the film, is that he always tries his best, but he can never seem to catch a break. I've been so blessed and lucky in my career that I try my best, and people have been so lovely and gifted me with amazing opportunities. But yeah, I'd say the similarity between the two of us is that we both don't quit.
I think another similarity, and maybe this is something from more from an outside perspective, but what you seem to bring to your roles is just this sort of innate likability. And you know, your characters are very likable, and including this one, despite the fact that he does some pretty crazy things. I mean, do you think that's part of what helps, I guess, the audience go on this journey, because they do feel this kind of connection?
Yeah, that was a big thing that we had spoken about before shooting. Obviously, there's kind of 6 different versions of Cherry throughout this film. So we had 6 mini character arcs and then one kind of massive one that went over the entire span of the film. The biggest thing for us was we needed the audience to fall in love with Cherry, because it's such a difficult journey to go along. You wouldn't want to go along that journey with a character that you didn't like. It was difficult portraying a sort of 17, 18-year-old kid falling in love without him being Peter Parker. And we really didn't want it to seem like Peter Parker suddenly started doing drugs. So that was for me the hardest character to crack, was the one that was most like myself. You know, I'm pleased to say that I think I did a pretty good job, and he is a massive departure from me while having obviously a lot of similarities. But that for me was the biggest challenge, was kind of making this character likable, but nothing like myself, so that I could convince audiences to trust me and come along on this journey with me.
What was it like shooting the scenes with Ciara and I mean, there was just such an amazing connection there that just came forth on screen?
It was a real pleasure. It was an absolute pleasure. She is a rock star, and we were so lucky that she was in this film and that she gave us the performance that she gave. And it wouldn't be half the project. It wouldn't have been half the project to work on, and it wouldn't have been half the final product without her input and her talent. It was really daunting for me. I've never sort of played a character in love before in that capacity, and I'm just really lucky that as soon as we met, we hit it off and we became really good friends, and we would hang out and we would talk about things that make us uncomfortable. Like we talk about like, oh, I'm a bit nervous about this scene. And she would talk about how she was a bit nervous about that scene. And just having that open dialogue between the two of us meant that when we were on set and we were most vulnerable, we felt safe because we were together.
Hey, I'm really happy you're here.
Why is that?
Because I like you. But there never seems to be enough time to do. You're it for me.
I feel the same way.
So I was really lucky that she was as cool as she was, and the way she handled herself on set, she was so professional and hardworking, and there was no the Russos would say jump and she would say how high. You know, she had a great work ethic, and she's awesome. I'd love to work with her again. I was saying earlier that I had nothing to do with the casting process with Emily. But when she was cast, the Russos sent me her audition tape about 2 or 3 months before production to just say, like, by the way, this is the girl we've cast for Emily. And for the first time in my career, I was so unbelievably intimidated by her, because she did the scene in her audition where she's screaming at Pills and Coke about Black putting on his black mask. And I remember watching it thinking, I need to do some more work, because if I don't, she's going to act me off the screen and no one's going to remember anything about what I did in this film. So we were blessed to have her, and I haven't seen her in ages, but I'd love to see her and catch up and talk about the film and what everything that's happening.
I mean, I know it's acting, but I also imagine, like, did you feel protective of her because there were just so many things that were going on that were so troublesome and intense?
Absolutely, yeah. I was very protective, and as was she to me. You know, we were a team and we had each other's backs, and we both knew that we were kind of climbing this mountain together, and it was a difficult one, to say the least, and we did it together, and I was so lucky to have it. I remember this scene, I don't think it's actually in the film, but I was talking to camera, Cherry's talking to camera about how much Emily is doing his head in, and she walks in the back frame and she's supposed to smack him in the back of the head. And it wasn't working. Like, on camera, it just didn't look right. So I said to her, I was like, Sierra, listen, one time, you can hit me as hard as you like. Just hit me in the back of the head and it'll be fine, and they'll get it. And I didn't expect her to hit me as hard. I've got the videos on my phone. And when I say the noise of her hitting the side of my head, both the Russos burst out laughing. And she runs back on camera and she's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. It was amazing. It was a really sweet moment. And yeah, but like I said, we were so lucky to have her, and she's amazing.
The movie is divided into, I want to say, 6 chapters or 6 sort of sections, and each of those, just visually watching it, I thought it was so cool. You know, like they all had different feels. There were different color washes. You know, production design. Were you aware of that during filming? I mean, how did, or was some of this added later? Like, how was this communicated to you in the direction of your role and how it played out?
I'm very inquisitive on set, and I like to know everything that's going on, and you know, when they're changing cameras and all of a sudden using different lenses or the lighting's different, I just like to know. I'm just interested in knowing. So that can be really annoying for directors sometimes, when the actor's like, why are you doing that? Why is that? Talk me through that choice. But what I love about the Russos is no creative choice was made without a real valid reason for elevating the story. So for example, when we first meet Emily, they used, I mean, I don't know the technicality of it, but they used this photography lens which had some sort of filter on it, which basically massively blew out the background and made her so kind of beautiful in the middle of the frame. And it means that the audience are only watching one thing, and that's her. And it's small little details like that people that, I don't know, might not know a lot about film won't notice, but subliminally they will be drawn into the film. And that's what the Russos are so good at. And Tom Siegel, our DOP, is a master. He's an absolute genius. It helped me because obviously I'm trying to portray the same character in 6 different lights. Mm-hmm. And the lights were different, and the cameras were different, and the sets and the costumes were different. So all of those creative decisions they made that were out of my hands did nothing but elevate my performance and help me kind of achieve what they wanted me to achieve. So I was, it was awesome. It was such a pleasure to watch. But I think one of the biggest things for me was my makeup artist, Rachel. What she was able to achieve on that film was incredible. I mean, from the makeup to the heavy eye bags that I would have when I was, abusing drugs, or to the aging makeup that we have when we meet Cherry when he's leaving prison, were amazing. Like, it was so strange looking at myself in the mirror and being young and sprightly, and then trying to get into that character being an old weathered man who'd been through so much. So a large portion of the success of those parts of the film all boil down to Rachel's makeup, which was just amazing. She's in the other room. I'm sure she's listening, and her ears are burning.
What decisions did you make as an actor to portray him? I mean, obviously he's feeling and doing these very dramatic things. And I can imagine that you had to make choices as to when to hold back and when to sort of really go all in on something. I mean, what sort of decisions did you make in that way?
I love to give my directors options. For example, the scene where I'm in the car and I sort of kind of lose it. There are other versions of that scene where it wasn't quite as dramatic, or it wasn't quite as aggressive. It was more sad, or it was more emotional, or it was more shell-shocked. So I think what we did is we just shot so many different versions of the same scenes with different types of kind of goals in mind. So there was never really a decision to like hold back here, because we would say hold back. And then on the next one, we want you to just give us everything you've got. Like the scene in the car, for example, where we're robbing the bank with pills and coke. That was one of the most intense days of filmmaking I have ever had. It was all three of us were in the car doing the scene. Jeff Haley, our camera operator, was also in the car. And there was no like setting up camera shots. There was no, right, the camera's going to be here and we're going to do the scene 5 times, then we cut, then we're going to move the camera here. It was just a free for all. We just drove around Cleveland and he just filmed us all absolutely losing our minds, just going mental. I couldn't speak for about a week. It was just a perfect example of there was never too much or too less. They just wanted us to try everything. And from trying everything, our amazing editor, Jeff Gross, I believe his name is, he has just kind of chiseled away and found the most perfect story for us. I couldn't be happier.
I just thought that there would definitely be some Oscar buzz around this, and particularly your performance. How do you feel about, I'm sure I'm not the first person saying that, and how do you feel about that possibility?
I don't really know how to feel about the whole thing. You know, I'm obviously honored that people were suggesting it. You know, that's the pinnacle of being an actor. That's the highest accolade that you can achieve or receive. It would be a dream come true. It would be amazing. But I'm also reminding myself that I'm only 24 and I've got a whole career ahead of me. And if it's not this one, it will just give me the drive to get it next time or in 10 years' time. I mean, look at DiCaprio. DiCaprio is one of my favorite actors of all time, arguably the best. And he only got his a few years ago. So while it's amazing and I'm so grateful that people are even considering it, I don't want to get my hopes up. And I just want to be realistic and enjoy the run or enjoy the wave while I'm on it. And hopefully I don't fall off. But if I do, I'll just swim back around and catch the next one.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Tom. This was a pleasure. It was great meeting you.
I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.